Okay, now this is a demonstration flight. Now there are some people who may want to become a pilot. These fellows over here, for instance, they look pretty keen, so we might invite them over to come and have a flight with us, and we'll show you how Flight Simulator is as real as it gets. Well, we'll invite them over, and first thing to do, of course, is to let them have a walk around the aircraft. Okay, so when we go, we'll have a walk around the aircraft, checking that everything is okay. One of the things to watch is these little pitot heads here. Very important. Make sure they are not covered, or the cover's been removed. Otherwise, if you leave them open without the cover, little wasps and things get in there and make their nests inside, and the next thing you know, you're airborne with no airspeed indicating. So those are the things to watch out for. Of course, on the bigger aircraft you've got other problems. Okay, so we've done the walk around the aircraft, and we might ask the pilots to waggle the controls. Okay, so we've got the ailerons, okay, elevator, okay, and the rudder, that's good. Okay, so everything looks fine outside. We might open the door and let them get inside. Okay, once you're inside, you're confronted with a whole lot of instruments. Okay, we can close the door now that we're in, and the first thing we look at, we put the handbrake on. Okay, the handbrake's on, and we close this mixture control right to the front there. And before we start, we have to prime, or before we go to that, before we start the engine, let's look at some of these instruments. These 6 instruments here are the main instruments in all aircraft, and here we have the that's the artificial horizon here. That's your altimeter. This is your vertical speed indicator, tells you whether you're going up or down. This is your heading indicator. This is your turn and slip, and this is your speedometer. So those 6 gauges are very important. You keep your eye on them all the time. Okay, now before we start the engine, we need to prime the engine. So we can do 3 or 4 pumps on the primer, and we turn these switches on. That gives you the power to the, we might have the panel lights on too, because that makes it easier to see. Okay, so now that we got the power on, and we can it's very hard to work this. I'll have to do it the hard or the easy way, and start the engine. Oh dear. Okay, right, we got the engine started. Engine started. Now before we go anywhere, we call up air traffic control and ask them to give us clearance to taxi to runway 10, and so we wait for them to reply. And when we got permission, we can take the handbrake off. Take the handbrake off and just a little bit of throttle, not much. Now you don't want to taxi too fast. Make sure you don't hit the wingtip on the refueling. Okay, now here we go down past the helicopter hangars. Keeping on the taxiway as much as you can without hitting anything on the way. Not as easy as you think. Okay, about a walking speed, a fast walking speed, shall we say. And keep the aircraft on the taxiway. And as we go down to the end here, we have to turn left at the bottom to get onto the runway 10. We're just passing an area here where they built a new hangar, Eagles Helicopter Service Centre. That's a very interesting place. We went to visit that the other day. Okay, we're coming up to the bend. My biggest problem is I tend to cut the corners, so I shall try not to do that. Oh, I think I did a little bit, but as I say, practice makes perfect, and I can say I'm far from being perfect at the moment, although I've been doing it for a few years. Okay, now we stop at the holding point here, and we contact air traffic control for clearance to take off on runway 10, and in due course we'll get clearance, and so we can go forward again and taxi onto the runway. Just a little bit of throttle. Things can get very out of control if you go too fast. Okay, we're coming round and we'll be lining up for takeoff. One of the glitches of computers, unfortunately. Okay, well, before we open the throttle, it's a good plan to, one, I like to give it a degree of flap, that gives you extra lift, and then just increase the throttle with the brake on. Okay, the engine sounds fine. Okay, we can take off now, and around about 74 knots we can start to lift off. Then keep an eye on the speed gauge, and when it gets close to 80 knots we can start to lift off. Right, yeah, 73 knots. I've seen we've got retractable undercarriage. Don't forget to put the undercarriage up, and a degree of flat. Okay, so we're climbing up to 1,000 feet. Just keep your eye on the gauges, and you see this gauge here is in the climb mode, so we're climbing up to 1,000 feet, and we can turn up the coast now, still climbing, and throttle now. Reduce the throttle to about 70 knots. Now you see this gauge here, that's your rev count, your manifold pressure. It has a green zone. You can see the green zone there. So try to keep the needle in the green zone, and then you don't overstress the engine. Once they get overheated, the engines can cause problems, and the last thing you need is a problem with the engine at 1,000 feet or any feet. Okay, so you can tell by the indicator here that we've reached 1,000 feet because it's set on the autopilot, and here we've got in the green zone. So when you have needles in the green zone, you know that you're flying pretty well. Okay then. Our flight today is going to take us up to a place called Stewarts, which is only a few nautical miles up the coast here, and just to demonstrate the flight for you, because Flight Simulator gives you everything you need to learn about flying, and there is a learning program that you can click onto, and you can study every aspect of aviation, with navigation, weather, all sorts of things. And once you've done a few hours on the Flight Simulator, you're just about ready to go and look for the real thing. And with the knowledge that you've gained from flying on the simulator, that'll stand you in really good stead for the real flying. And I can recommend this to everyone. Okay, we're probably climbing a little bit high at the moment, so we can press the trim down and level off. We're at 1,200 feet. Okay, so now the airport is about 6 nautical miles on our left, round about 11 o'clock, somewhere just behind the instrument combing there, and we'll see it more plainly as we get past it. Well, we won't get past it, of course, but we'll get with it in view. Now once you're airborne and trimmed out with your needle in the horizontal position, it could probably come down a little touch more. Okay, so the 172 is a really basic little aircraft. Most pilots start off on an aircraft like this, or maybe the Piper Cub, which is even more simple, and very, very basic, that is. And of course you can go up to jet trainers and those sort of things as you get more proficient. Now I can see the runway or the airport up ahead. It is just up here, and so we've got a couple of nautical miles to fly. We're doing 83 knots. The manifold pressure is in the green zone. The rev counter's in the green zone here, so everything's sweet, and we're cruising along fine. And there's no need to overstress the aircraft. Now down here in the middle. There's another knob here which is the propeller pitch control. Now you use that mostly once you're sort of up in the altitude area, and it varies the speed of the engine for you, and it does other things which I'm not too familiar with. But it's a huge learning curve, and I'm still learning. And I've been flying for over 10 years now, and love every minute of it. But as I say, it's a big learning curve. Now we're coming up to the approach to the runway, which is over here. It's runway 31, so we can reduce throttle now. Reduce throttle and bring down to about 65 knots eventually. Okay, now we need the undercarriage down, and probably at the moment 1 degree of 1 notch of flaps. We'll probably have more flap later as we get closer to the airport. With the throttle just sort of idling, 73 knots, 74 knots. Don't want to bring it too far down, otherwise you can stall the aircraft, and that is very damaging and very embarrassing. So we keep a fair degree of speed up on the aircraft. Now in FSX you always get trees in front of the runway, as we have here, and unfortunately sometimes you just can't avoid them. You try to come in a little bit higher than normal. Now one of my failings is I go too far to the right, and the secret is to have the runway facing directly at you, which it isn't at the moment. I've got to go left a little bit to compensate for my error. Okay, we're coming in. We might put full flap down now. There's one tree branch coming up. Okay, we might have just missed it, I'm not sure. A couple of birds hanging around here, which... Okay, we're just about on the ground. Okay, we're on the ground. Keep on the track. Lift the flaps up. I will taxi up to the end of the runway here. Okay, open the throttle a bit. Some of these small airports are really nice. They've got interesting little things like the old DC-3, which has been robbed of a few parts, probably to service other DC-3s, and it's been left discarded in the back of a hangar somewhere, or beside the hangar. Okay, I'm going to not taxi too fast. Just park up to the side of this in hangar here. Looks like a Piper Cherokee or something. It's got a tail wheel. I'm not sure what sort of aircraft it is, but whatever aircraft, doesn't matter. Okay, let's pull up here. Now we'll get back in cockpit view again, and we put the handbrake on, handbrakes on, and now we want to close down. The best thing to do is to pull the mixture control right out, and that'll stop the prop. Good thing is to remember to push it back in again. Right, so what else have we got to do? We've got to turn the power off. So we can turn these switches off and take the lights off here, and once everything is closed off we can open the door and get out. Okay, so we're out of the aircraft now. We can close the door, and that's the end of this flight, and I hope you've enjoyed it, but there is a heap more to come. As you progress through Flight Simulator, you can fly the big jets eventually. So until next time, all the best. Cheers, Mike.